coming.
Thanks, Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm going to share with you what we've been doing in California, engaging conservation districts in the hope that you get excited and try to engage as well. So next, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the Carbon Cycle Institute, we're a small nonprofit organization based in Northern California, and our mission is to advance the carbon cycle as the fundamental organizing concept underlying land management and on-farm conservation in an effort to mitigate and adapt to the global climate crisis. So we strongly believe that agriculture needs to be part of the solution to climate change, and we've created this framework based on existing relationships and existing infrastructure to, again, position agriculture as part of the solution to climate change. Next, please. So that's the kind of the bad news. The greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, particularly CO2, are going up. It's because of our economy and our lifestyle. That's the blue line going up and down. Our solutions have been focusing on emissions reductions, and they are really important, but with emissions reductions only, the gases, the greenhouse gases are gonna linger in the atmosphere for a long time. So what we need to be doing is bend that curve, look at that red line to start capturing CO2 so we can tackle climate change that way. And this is where agriculture can become part of the solution. I call it the CO2 surplus because we work with agricultural producers, and not everybody believes in climate change, but we can still have a conversation about the role of carbon in agriculture. Next, please. So a few years ago, a big partnership in Marin County set out to test the hypothesis that whether we could manage soils for increased carbon sequestration. And they went about this by applying half an inch of compost to grazed rangelands, and they started looking at whether that carbon in the compost was going into the soil. In other words, if we could manage soils for increased carbon sequestration. And so as far as soil carbon, yes, after just one-time application of half an inch of compost, carbon in the soil kept going up. They have data now for about 10 years. So year after year, the carbon in the soil continue going up. They also found that forest productivity went up between 40 and 70%, and also found out that soil water infiltration rates went up by 25%, probably explaining why the forest productivity went up. And the reason is because the plant community on those rangelands started taking up that carbon and enhancing its own capacity to take more carbon out of the atmosphere through photosynthesis, taking CO2 out of the atmosphere and put it into soils. Next, please. So that was a kind of a wake-up call and a reminder that carbon is the keystone element in agricultural productivity and resilience. We've been focusing on nitrogen for a long time and forgetting about carbon. And the reason carbon is the key element is because it's the way that energy flows through a farming system. And so it's a good lever to have control over. As you increase carbon in your systems, you can control the flow of energy and direct it to what you're trying to produce. Whether you're growing carrots or raising cattle or producing hay, you need to have that, harvest as much solar energy and have it flow through the farm system in the form of carbon. Next, please. Compost is just one practice. There are several ways by which farmers and ranchers can increase carbon in their farms and ranches, in their systems. There's 34 NRCS practices that can be quantified, that they've been designed with other conservation objectives in mind, but they happen to have an additional climate change benefit. Things like prescribed grazing, cover crops, no-till, substituting organic amendments with or synthetic fertilizer with organic amendments. Again, 34 of those NRCS practices do have some climate change benefits as well. So we went with those and we started thinking about or creating this idea of a carbon farm plan, which is based after NRCS conservation planning, that NRCS conservation planning process. But carbon farm plan is a comprehensive look at a farm or a ranch, evaluating every single opportunity for increased carbon sequestration through practices, the practices that I mentioned, like compost application, windbreaks, hedgerows, again, all those tried and true NRCS conservation practices. So again, a very comprehensive look at a farm or a ranch, looking for every single opportunity, regardless of resources, regardless of what the producer wants to do. Again, it's what's possible from a biological perspective in terms of increased carbon sequestration. Next, please. So those practices, the greenhouse gas benefits of those practices proposed through a carbon farm plan are quantified mostly through the COMET tools, COMET Planner and COMET Farm. We encourage our carbon farm planners to look for other sources of data when available, other models that may work better for other practices. So yes, COMET Planner and COMET Farm are the main tools, but again, planners should rely on other sources of data to quantify the greenhouse gas benefits of those practices. Next, please. So that's the output from COMET Planner for a carbon farm plan. You see the practices on the left proposed. This is a 8,000 acre ranch in Santa Barbara County. You'll see the owner there, Russell Chamberlain. So you see the practice on the left, rangeland compost or compost on rangelands, compost on croplands, shuttle belts, hedgerows, and then on the columns on the right, the quantification of the CO2 equivalents that would be sequestered after application of those practices. COMET Planner gives you the output for 1 year. You can extrapolate to 20 years and eventually to the maturity of the practice. Next. As we increase carbon in the systems, the farming systems has increases their own capacity to capture additional water. This is NRCS data showing that for every increase in soil, every 1% increase in soil organic matter, the soil can retain an additional 25,000 gallons of water per acre. Next. So incorporate that into the calculations we made in those carbon farm plans, and again, through every the implementation of those practices, that would increase soil organic matter, that would increase the water holding capacity of the soil, and so we calculate, at full implementation, what a carbon farm plan for a particular farm, how much additional water would be captured. In this case, that 8,000 acre ranch in Santa Barbara would be able to capture an additional 917 acre feet of water. Next, please.
Sorry, there's a little delay. I don't know why it's not going over for you.
The slides.
Eek! Sorry. All of a sudden I just got kicked out. We knew that was going to happen eventually. Is everything back up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're not in this to just produce carbon farm plans across California. The idea behind a carbon farm plan is to create a carbon farmer. In other words, a farmer who has carbon or puts carbon in the middle of the decision-making process and understands what the benefits are of increased carbon sequestration. Again, even beyond the climate change benefits. So again, we're after hoping that the carbon farm planning process creates carbon farmers. Once farmers understand the role of carbon, then they start coming up with their own practices, being innovative, and truly understanding why they should again put carbon in as part of their management philosophy. Next, please. So we've been working with conservation districts. We call them resource conservation districts here in California, being able to engage about 40 districts across the state. We provide them with technical assistance, financial assistance, and the RCDs also asked us to provide them with a frame for communicating, sharing best management practices, sharing information as they engage in carbon farming. So the idea is that, again, they all start working together as they explore carbon farming in their districts. Next. All these districts are creating their own carbon farming programs, so they all look different. Some of them are focusing on forest land. Some of them are focusing on farm compost. Again, we ask them, we give them the skills and the knowledge, and they all building their own carbon farming programs. But they all look different across California, depending on their local circumstances. Next, please. So again, so far we've been able to engage about 40 conservation districts. They're not doing this alone, and you'll see this, how they're working through their local partnerships, strengthening them and expanding the partnerships that they already have, but they're not doing this alone. Again, they work in partnership with other organizations. There's high demand for carbon farm plans. For every plan that a district offers to producers, there's between 6 and 8 producers interested or sending an application for that carbon farm plan. And there are districts, you see them on the map in blue, where we have carbon farming activity, but not necessarily led by a conservation district. So sometimes other partners like a land trust take the lead on promoting carbon farming in a particular county. Next. So now that we have about, again, 40 conservation districts engaged, they are in the process of organizing themselves into hubs. And the idea is that they start working independently, not independently of us, but so we provide them support through the hubs instead of one-on-one. The idea is that they start, they can share stuff, they can share resources, they can do, go after funding together. So this is we have been able to secure funding to create 7 regional hubs, and they're all in the process of again, creating those regional hubs and organizing themselves that way. Next. That's probably it. And we just recently finalized the online curriculum for carbon farm planning training. Like Christina was saying, we tested it with folks in North Carolina with their districts there. And we're hoping to deploy that in Wisconsin and do an online training for carbon farm planners there. So that's exciting. So I think that's my last slide.
Great, thank you, Pelayo. Jessica?
All right, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Great.
Yes.
All right, well, it's fantastic to be here. I'm excited to be presenting with Pelayo and William, and just kind of bringing the perspective from, a private entity that's also looking at climate smart farming and carbon farming through the lens of these carbon farm plans. So just kind of bringing our perspective here today. So as a farmer-owned cooperative, we have more than 1,800 member farms throughout the US, and we see the impacts of climate change firsthand across our members' farms. And as a business that was founded more than 30 years ago with sustainability in mind, we believe it's our responsibility to be part of the climate solution from our facilities to our farms. In 2019, we achieved a pretty big accomplishment. All of our owned facilities are powered with 100% renewable electricity, and we're working to install renewable energy on as many farms as fast as we can through innovative industry partnerships. But beyond energy, our farmers are committed to climate smart farming. This means implementing conservation practices that increase carbon sequestration above and below ground, as well as enteric and manure management practices that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So you can go to the next slide. So just a little bit about us. Again, we're owned by our farmer members, roughly 1,800 in 34 states, as well as Canada, Australia, and the UK. We have more than 350 member farms in Wisconsin. We make up 13% of all US certified organic farms. We're not just dairy, we also produce eggs, produce, pork, feed, and poultry. 85% of our dairy farms have fewer than 100 cows, and our average dairy herd size is 76. And our average farm size is 273 acres. And our farmers manage nearly 500,000 organic acres across the country. Okay, next slide. So for us, climate action on our farms starts with our pastures and our soil. Our cows spend more time on pasture than most, and they eat more feed from pasture than most. And because of this, organic agriculture, we believe in particular, has a unique opportunity to be part of the climate solution. Our farmers are already carbon farmers, but we believe that we can do more. All right, next slide. So this is a graphic that we use to communicate various carbon farming practices to our member farms, as well as external audiences, whether that be consumers and or customers. Increasingly, we have our customers, those who purchase milk from us, ask about carbon farming and climate smart farming. There's incredible interest out there, not only on our member farms, but also in the industry. And these are practices that we found our farmers can imagine incorporating into their farm management regime. So we have cover cropping, which 90% of our farms are already doing, reduced tillage, riparian buffers, silvopasture, hedgerows, rotational grazing. Again, most of our farmers, well, all of our farmers are practicing rotational grazing, but getting them to move towards managed intensive grazing. Windbreaks, compost application, range plantings, and crop rotations. So this list isn't comprehensive. There's other practices, but this is just one of the pieces of materials that we use to help communicate carbon farming. Okay, next slide. Which would be number 23. There we go. Yep. So we started ramping up our climate smart farming work in 2017 with a carbon farming pilot in California, where we now have 18 member dairy farms. And these farms are facing increasing regulatory pressure. California has the nation's most progressive greenhouse gas emission targets. We expect other states will follow suit. They already are. So California law SB 1383 requires dairy and other livestock sectors to reduce methane emissions by 40% by 2030. So knowing that this law was in place, the increasing pressure on our farms, and just the right mix of partners. And I really want to just stress here that the work that we've accomplished would not be possible without the incredible partners that we've had, such as the Carbon Cycle Institute. We have an industry partner, Annie's. They're a subsidiary of General Mills. And then our resource conservation districts, including Gold Ridge, RCD, you'll hear from William here shortly. So leveraging the expertise from these partners has been incredibly helpful. So the Carbon Cycle Institute and the RCDs in California, we worked with 4 RCDs, worked together to prepare carbon farm plans for 5 of our California dairies. So we did 2 in Sonoma County, 1 in Mendocino, and then 2 in Humboldt. The planning process was collaborative and incredibly useful to Organic Valley sustainability staff, such as myself, our field staff. So we have staff in all of our dairy regions across the country, as well as our farmer members. The process for us took about 6 months from start to finish. And our farmers would estimate that their time commitment was roughly 20 hours. Now, these 5 dairy carbon farm plans were some of the first in California. So the RCDs that we worked with had varying levels of experience and expertise in preparing these plans. But with guidance and assistance from the Carbon Cycle Institute, we feel that all of these plans were professional and will provide ongoing guidance for these farms moving forward. So we just recently completed our first dairy carbon farm plan, actually the first dairy carbon farm plan in the state of Oregon, thanks to a partnership with the Yamhill County NRCS district. And the district staff were trained by CCI, and it was at a Oregon Land and Water Conservation Conference a couple of years ago that their staff heard about this work in California and were inspired to submit a grant to USDA to do carbon farm planning in Oregon. So now we're seeing some of the first carbon farm plans as a result of that work. We use these plans as supporting documentation to seek implementation funding. So for us, not only is the planning process incredibly important, but then it's what happens next. So helping these farmers through the implementation of practices. And much of that depends on financial incentives. So we've been able to use these plans to secure more than $3 million in direct farmer grants in the state of California. Okay, next slide. So here's an example of one of the first carbon farm plans that we did in California. This is Ocean Breeze Dairy. And what we're showing you here, so this plan was roughly on 146 pages in length. They're incredibly comprehensive, but I wanted to just share a couple slides that our farmers find most helpful and most relevant. So this particular dairy, they have a milking herd of 350 cows on just over 310 acres. The farm family does own several hundred additional grazing acres to support this dairy herd. So this slide outlines the estimated carbon sequestration achieved through existing practices on the farm. And this is one question we get frequently from our farmers. They want to know what their current practices are able to achieve. So through the planning process, they learn what their existing practices are doing in terms of carbon sequestration. And this format, this table format, our farmers have found to be very helpful. So next slide. So here, the slide outlines the estimated carbon sequestration achieved through planned practices at Ocean Breeze Dairy. So these are the practices that they can do in addition to what they're already doing. So these might be new practices, or they might be enhancing existing practices. And so this farmer is already currently implementing compost application, riparian forest buffers, and they're planning an alternative manure management practice as a project as a result of this planning process. So they were able to see and prioritize what practices they wanted to move forward with. All right, next slide. So here we just have an example of one of the maps produced for this particular farm by William at Goldridge RCD. And these maps are incredibly helpful. And this is the type of technical assistance that our farmers are asking for. They want to implement carbon farming practices, but they need access to the technical assistance providers to help them plan and visualize how these practices can be implemented on their farm. Next slide. So this is just another way that we can help farmers understand the benefit in terms of sequestration and greenhouse gas emission reductions. They often ask, well, what does this mean if I do this? How many cars are we taking off the road? How many trees are we planting? So just providing some sort of visual piece for the plan to support it. It also helps us communicate out to our internal stakeholders the benefits of doing this work. All right, next slide. And here, it might be hard to read, I'm not sure, but just wanted to capture some of the sentiments from the farmers that we've had participate thus far. All of them have been overwhelmingly positive. And as we seek to scale up climate smart farming and carbon farming across the country, we're looking to do much of the same from our learnings in California, is to partner with on the ground resources, kind of leverage that network of trust that already exists between our farmers, local NRCS and soil and water conservation districts to accelerate both the planning and the implementation. And I think that might be the last slide for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm just gonna fix my thing while we get Will sort of set up. Thank you very much. And just remind everybody that you can put any questions that you have in the chat box, and we will get to those here pretty soon. All right. I'll get my screen back up here for you.
All right.
Hopefully you can see that okay.
Yes, I can. And I'm just going to assume that you can hear me.
We can hear you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to Christina and the crew for this invitation. Thank you to my partners, Pelayo and Jessica, for teeing this, what I'm going to talk about here next. So my name is William Hart. Like Christina said, I am a Wisconsin native. I grew up in Appleton. I did my undergraduate work at UW-Madison, and Wisconsin is near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to talk today about our project at the Ocean Breeze Dairy. I'm going to focus on primarily the riparian restoration part of the project. So I'm going to be, yeah, you can go ahead and advance. So I'm going to take you from State Street all the way out to Northern California. Just wanted to give a visual of where we're located in the United States here. So next slide. So I'm with the Goldridge RCD. That's represented in the red on the map. And we are located in Sonoma County. That is represented by the blue. The blue is the entire footprint of Sonoma County. There are 2 resource conservation districts in Sonoma County, Sonoma RCD, and then Goldridge. And then I included Marin RCD, which is our partner down to the south there, represented in the green. And that is where the, Pelayo was talking about the Marine Carbon Project, so that's where that is coming from. Next slide, please. And then I just have a kind of a close-up of our district. So the blue line, that kind of like illuminated blue line on the top of the map, that squiggly line is the Russian River. That is our district boundary on the north. And then you'll see a large urban center off to the east on the right-hand side of the map. That is the city of Santa Rosa. Our district boundary is kind of squiggly, you know, throughout the whole of our district. That was because of the voters 80 years ago when the district was initially formed. They had to opt in or out to be a part of our district. We were the 7th resource conservation district to be formed in the state of California. And that, you know, explains our kind of squiggly wiggly line. And then I just have some of our different watersheds that we work in represented on the map. Green Valley Creek, Dutchville, Willow, Salmon Creek, all of those are still salmon bearing streams, coho salmon and steelhead. So, you know, a lot of our work is, I kind of represent the agricultural side of thing. I work with dairies and rangeland producers, but we have a very diverse district, not only in terms of the types of agriculture, but also just the biology, the ecology. It's a really wonderful part of the country. So I welcome you all to come on out and visit. And I'm going to be taking you, you can advance it, there's a little animation. So I'm taking you down to the southern part, right on the county line between Sonoma and Marin. And that is where the Ocean Breeze Dairy is located. Next slide, please. So I put together a story map through Esri software, and I put the link in the chat. This ArcGIS story map is a really powerful tool for communication. This is my first attempt at using the story map, but I really encourage you to check it out. It's a really powerful kind of like a mashup of maps, pictures, videos, narrative, and it's just a really powerful tool. So click on that link in the chat and you can learn more about this project. Next slide, please. So Jessica showed you the overall map for the entire, you know, the carbon farm plan that was identifying all of the practices. She mentioned of how we took that plan and worked with Jared to prioritize practices that we'd like to implement. And then we used, you know, we used that process to apply for grant funding through the California Department of Food and Agriculture through their Healthy Soils program. So I'm just showing you a map here of what we did in that project. So it was 30 acres of compost application, and it's a demonstration project. So there was side-by-side comparison. The green on the map represents where we applied compost. The orange is where we did not apply compost. And then the hatched mark, that black hatch mark, is where we did soil sampling. That was part of the requirements for the grant. And then that kind of like lime green, avocado green is the riparian restoration. And it's right along Ebabias Creek, which eventually feeds into the Estero Americano, and then that eventually makes its way to the Pacific Ocean. So next slide, please. So what does it take to implement a practice? And there's a bunch of little animations here, so go ahead, Christina. So it took partnership, took partners, just like Jessica and Pelayo were talking about. Partnership between OV, the NRCS, Carbon Cycle, and it also takes funding, like Jessica was mentioning. So we did have funding through the CDFA, the Department of Food and Agriculture, their Healthy Soils program. This is part of their Climate Smart Agriculture program. So any of these projects that are implemented need to demonstrate that greenhouse gases, that there's savings as a result of this project. We also got funding through our state coastal conservancy. That was for the riparian restoration in particular. We have funding at the county level through a NRCS Regional Conservation Partnership Program, the RCPP program. And then we also used, there's a special pot of money in EQIP for the RCPP. And then we also got funding through our partnership with the California Association of Resource Conservation Districts. WCB is the Wildlife Conservation Board. They have a pot of money in their Climate Adaptation Fund. So it took all of these different funding sources to implement not only the compost, but also the riparian restoration. And, you know, many of these grant funding programs also require some sort of cost share. If it's a federal fund, they need some sort of state or local source of cost share. If it's a federal grant, they need, or if it's a state grant, they need some sort of federal or local source of funding. So we've been able to achieve that through our EQIP, through Jared's application for an EQIP grant. Organic Valley also was a funder to us, to the RCD directly to make this project happen. And then we were also able to rely upon volunteer labor from our area soil scientist out of Salinas through the NRCS. I was able to do soil sampling in partnership with the Sonoma Youth Ecology Corps. And then we also have the Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed, or STRAW program, to help with the planting. And then other technical service providers like an agronomist that helped us with the analysis and just recommendations based on our soil sampling. Next slide, please. So what does it take to implement it? So we needed, and there's a bunch of little animations here again. So we needed the materials. We needed native plants from a credible nursery. We need irrigation, the supplies in the system, but also a source of water. We needed fencing materials to exclude the livestock from the planting site. And we needed quality compost to meet the requirements of the Healthy Soils program. We also hired a landscape designer to develop the planting plan. And we used that planting plan to put out a public request for landscape contractors to actually do the implementation of the project. We used the estimates from those contractors to help inform our funding proposal development, you know, to help us develop the budget for those projects. We needed installation crew. We were able to utilize the Conservation Corps North Bay crew to help with installation, and then also through the STRAW program, the Students and Teachers Restoring the Watershed. The STRAW program is going to be doing maintenance for 3 years on the plants that were put in the ground. And, you know, perhaps most importantly, we needed Jared's willingness and his family's willingness to participate in this program. But as a result, you know, we were able to implement 2 of these practices, 660 riparian plants and 30 acres of compost. And then I have another little animation. You can advance it. You know, it's all really all of this is built on trust between the landowner and the RCD and the partners. It took our own commitment from just to see this project through, patience, partnership, persistence. We applied for, I think, over 6 different grants to actually implement it. And none of that was secure. But we had to believe and trust that it was gonna happen. Next slide, please. So here's a timeline. Jessica talked about from start to finish. The project started in August of 2017 when we got that initial request from Organic Valley. We had a site visit shortly after, and then by February of 2018, we had a draft of the carbon farm plan developed. In between the draft being finalized and opportunities for funding is in April of 2018 is when we applied for the Healthy Soils Program demonstration project. And by June, we had learned that our funding was secured and that we could move ahead. We also applied for EQIP during that time. We've had a number of public events. Since it's a demonstration project, it required participation from the public at large as well. So we've had field days and other tours. And then, I guess I have it kind of in the highlights in red there. Throughout this whole process, we've also been dealing with wildfires. We had wildfires in 2017, 2018, 2019, and that's, and then even we had some flooding in there in 2019. Just that this is a part of the reality that we're dealing with. So it certainly through it's just a traumatic event. I guess I'll just leave it at that. But through it all, through that trust, through that belief, through that partnership, we've been able to implement the project. Next slide, please. So this is what our landscape engineer, the planting plan that was developed for this. And like I said, we were able to use this to put out the announcement to landscape contractors to help us with, to develop the budget for this project. And this is maybe maybe not a step that's not always taken, but through our NRCS funding, through that RCPP funding, we had that available. We felt that it was, we felt that it was needed really just to figure out if we're putting these projects together, who is out there in the restoration community who can actually implement these projects. So this was a really, really useful piece of the project. Next slide, please. And then I'm just going to jump right into to some of the, really the benefits of this project. So we had, I think, 6 different schools to do the actual planting. All of this is pre-COVID. This is like in December of 2020 or 2019, and then into early 2020 is when we did the planting. The straw program does in-class education, and then they bring the school kids out to actually, to do the implementing. And you can advance these because, there's a couple of different pictures of kids. To me, like this makes my work, this makes all of it just worth it to see these school kids get just totally excited about the work that we're doing. and just the meaningful, just like a life-changing experience, I want to say. Just the you know, the cross-pollination of what's happening with these adults and kids working together on a working agricultural property. I just love it. Next slide. So we, you know, I just think that's super cool, right? All these school kids, cows in the back. And then one of the groups of kids, you can advance it, Christina. One of the schools that we worked with was an arts charter school. The kids went back to the classroom, put these drawings together to document their experience of what the day was like. And you can go to the next slide. You know, to me, that's just so rewarding. That's just beautiful. And this is our result. This is, you know, just some of the, you're seeing Ebebias Creek there, and then the plantings that are on both right bank and left bank of the creek. We planted over 25 different species of plants. And, you know, it's an experiment. You don't see too many trees here on the site. So it is a bit of an experiment. But we hope that it's gonna, you know, provide shade and some wind relief to the creek itself. Hopefully some shade, some spots where the cows can hang out. You can go to the next slide. So like I said, we needed a irrigation system. We have two 3,000-gallon tanks on site. Both of those are daisy chained together. You can advance it. It's powered by a solar array. And that frame was put together by this gentleman. This is Mr. Mike Griffin. He's the now retired, but he was Organic Valley field consultant or field tech for OV. You know, I was only able to do this project because of that man right there. Or he was a key player in all of this. His willingness, his trust, you know, his relationships that he had with our dairy producers. He just opened doors for me that and has just been a wonderful partner in this whole project. So it takes, you know, it's that human relationships that make this thing work. You know, I guess maybe this is a little the whole irrigation setup might be a little bit strange for my brothers and sisters in Wisconsin. California has a Mediterranean climate. We get rain from mid-October, late October until, you know, end of March, maybe sometimes into April. So we have very dry conditions from May through September. And these plants need irrigation to survive. So we're actually trucking in water to fill these tanks because we're doing this project on a site where water is scarce. So I just want to acknowledge our partners, our funders for this project. All of their logos are displayed here. It really takes all of these partners to make this work. And then I do have, I don't know if we have extra time, but I do have some additional slides after these, and I can get into that or not based on. I'll leave it to my my moderators.
Yeah, I think we have a few more minutes. You just have a couple more slides, I believe. And it sounds like Pelayo and Jessica are answering a lot of the questions in the chat. We'll hopefully have a few minutes to kind of expand on a few of those. But if we want to just run through a couple of the last final slides, I think might be.
Yeah, please. I just, I put together some resources if folks are interested in finding, additional resources for carbon farm planning. I put this one in. I love the quote. If I have seen further than others, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Partnership is a strong part of our culture of the RCD. I'm just put this slide together with all of our many different partners that we work with, from federal to state agencies to engineering firms and just local nonprofits. We have a wide range, diverse group of partners that we are able to collaborate with and to work with. So, I just want to stress the importance of partnership. The RCD has a project tracker. This is for the entire state. But if you want to look for more information about the Ocean Breeze Dairy project in particular, I encourage you to check that out. You can advance it, Christina. All of the projects that are entered into this website, the RCD project tracker, there's a budget component, so you can see how much the total cost for this project was. And also just like background information, spatial information. So if you Google RCD project tracker, you will find that resource. And then I would also encourage you to check out the Goldridge website. If you go under programs, there's that little, one of the banners just underneath our logo, the banner there, it says programs. We have a section on carbon farm planning. You can see our application that we put out to landowners to participate in our program. You can see we have a Google Doc that is a 2-page application, for landowners or land managers to express their interest in participating. You can advance. And then there's also the Land+Smart program, which is a regional effort between Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, Marin RCDs. We have Land+Smart is really geared for farm plans that are dealing with water quality regulations. But then within that, on this template page, there's also templates for carbon farm plans. I think there's like 2 little animations here, Christina. So if you look at resources, and then if you check that bottom link, we'll have templates for carbon farm plans for those different land types. And then I would also, encourage you to check out the Carbon Cycle Institute's website. If you go to it's the carbon farm planning page, and you can advance it, Christina. If you look down below there, they have a carbon farm planning step-by-step guide, which is a wonderful resource. And then also they have a binder, a resource binder. So if you Google carbon farm planning resource binder, that link should be the first one that comes up. And it's it's like a 150-page resource that is just fantastic. So I encourage you to check out all of those different resources. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much. That was really great. I appreciate that. Sounds like Pelayo and Jessica have been doing a great job answering some of the questions in the chat. Perhaps if you guys just want to, is there anything you think we should just maybe touch back on that's within the chat that you could elaborate on? I know that there's been quite a few going on, or Serge, if you're around and have any
Yeah.
you want to pull out, that might be good ones to start with. Give just a few more minutes.
Yeah, there's some good questions that if people would just mosey on over to the right side of the screen, that's probably our best bet. I don't know if they want to rehash what they wrote or
Yeah.
if that's.
Pelayo and Jessica, is there anything that really stood out to you in some of these questions that you think we should maybe, or any themes? And always a little bit difficult to share the screen at the same time.
Yeah, I guess couple of things. How do you communicate with producers? How do you tell them, you know, their why they should look for carbon as a solution to their goals and their concerns, and just making that connection between water quality and carbon, soil erosion and carbon, productivity and carbon. Those connections can be made, but the districts need to be, the planners need to be knowledgeable about how to talk to the producers about how to do that. So that's something that is it's coming up here in California too. Even with the districts that we work at, they tell us, you know, sometimes it's hard, you know, to really make those connections. And the other one is funding. It's for, at least here in California, it's a mix of federal and state grants, some private foundations, and some emerging markets for climate beneficial products like FiberShed is working with wool producers. But carbon markets are not very conducive for participation from farmers the way they're structured. But it's in everybody's minds how to make those work. But for now, you know, they're not structured in a way that it's very appealing for farmers to participate.
Great. I see a couple other questions. I think you made us well through this list. I see a question from Whitney of the 40 carbon farms in California. What are the average size of the operation? Jessica mentioned something about 76 cows, but I think she was referencing organic value farms and not the 40. I know Pelayo kind of had some answers here, but if there's anything else you guys want to mention.
I just put in the note. Oh, go ahead.
Well,
Well,
you know, I mean, if you looked at the table that Jessica shared, like what really jumps out is the compost application on rangeland. So that's where we've been focused primarily, but that's now changing. But initially we were focused on rangeland operations, and those, you know, are, I would say, like average 300-acre ranch.
Great. Jessica, did you have anything else you wanted to follow up on with that or cover it?
nope, I put it in the
great.
chat box. So I think we're good.
And then I think the only other question, maybe we didn't get to too much, was the one we all knew was coming. Carbon credits. Are carbon credits being sold through this program? And any thoughts you guys want to share on, you know, selling carbon is kind of a really big hot topic here right now. So if you guys have any thoughts to share on that perspective.
No, but there's several barriers. One of them is that the carbon markets are structured through these protocols, and the protocols are practice-based. So if you have a carbon farm plan with, say, 10 different practices, a producer would have to go through 10 different protocols. So that's just one of the reasons. The other one is that the price of carbon is very low, you know, say $3 to $5 per ton, which equates to $3 to $5 per acre, because on average, a farm can sequester about a ton of CO2 equivalents per acre. So at $5 an acre, I mean, you can't do anything on a farm, right? You can't barely pick up the phone for $5 an acre, right? I wouldn't have a conversation with a farmer. It's like, hey, you know, I have this really cool thing that's going to pay you $5 an acre. It's a non-starter. Then the cost, you know, 60% of the value of the credit goes to the company that validates and verifies the credits. So again, the markets are structured with, they're not structured with agriculture in mind. You know, trying to address the diversity, the complexity, and the risk, the uncertainty that, you know, it's going to rain this year and maybe not next year. I mean, it's really, so those markets are not structured for that, to cover that. So there are companies like Nori looking into structuring those in a way that is in that we actually can deploy land-based, or the farmers can participate. But for now, they're really, this is not feasible. This is not. They don't make sense for farmers.
Are you thinking this will go on this way for another couple of years before it's practical for farming?
I couldn't give. I mean, I've been on the carbon markets roller coaster for 10 years. I would not venture. 10 years ago we thought, the Chicago Climate Exchange. Oh, yeah, this is it. We're done. Let's go. And it crashed. So I wouldn't venture a time frame. But people are looking, because without agriculture, without soils, it's going to be really hard for all of us, even globally, to meet our climate change goals. So we better get to any sort of incentives, public and private, to entice farmers to do this work, because otherwise, again, I don't know how we're going to meet our climate change goals.
What about indigo ag and General Mills and applied ecological services and all these folks who are, practicing soil, carbon sequestration trading? And so, a lot of folks are focused on planting trees. Obviously, when we're talking about long-term carbon sequestration, I think we have to focus on the soil. And, I've been involved in these projects in the past. There's active carbon trades right now with soil carbon. And so I don't know if that was brought up or if I'm missing it, but I think there's an enormous amount of opportunity. I feel like a lot of it is networking and just everyone getting on the same page as far as where those transactions are. But I know the Palouse region of the country was actively engaged in a soil carbon trade. So if anyone can speak to that, I would be excited to hear.
Again, I'm not that familiar with the markets. The ones I know they have pilots, but I don't know of any mainstream platform that is actually attracting, except for, again, Nori, Indigo. Those people are trying, but I don't think we're there yet in terms of any farmer in any part of the country to pick up the phone and say, yeah, I want to do this, and have a clear pathway. So again, what I know of is people are piloting all these different platforms, but I don't think, again, they're like I wouldn't call them a market yet.
I'll put a link to a document in the chat box if I can find it quickly, but some work was done recently to just analyze or assess the 4 most common markets out there right now, ecosystem markets, so Nori, Indigo Ag, the ecosystem markets consortium, and then the Soil and Water Outcomes Fund. So it's sort of a matrix, and it's very helpful because you can kind of see how these markets are structured. Our farmers are asking a lot of questions. We're not promoting any single market. Like Pelayo said, the price paid is too low, much too low for us to encourage our farmers to participate at this point. I think the farms that are benefiting are larger like grain farms that are doing cover cropping or transitioning to no-till. So if you happen to be a farm that falls into that category, I think there might be an opportunity for you. One of the other requirements is additionality. So the practice that you're implementing has to be new or a pretty significant enhancement over what you're already doing, which is hard for some organic and pasture-based farms to achieve that additionality. We've been tracking this pretty closely, but I would agree with everything already said here.
Yeah, and I can share that link too. I think you're probably speaking about the presentation a couple weeks ago that American Farmland Trust put on, and I will make sure that gets out, especially to you, Christy. I'll make sure that you get those. It was a very helpful document, and the recording from that webinar is also available on the American Farmland Trust website as well, which I can share with everybody after. But thank you, guys. We'll wrap up. We're just a little bit over. Hopefully some folks can scooch over. We had another session starting at 2:15. But thank you, Will, Pelayo, Jessica, so much. And for everybody else out there, if you have any more questions, I'm happy to also, if you're interested in getting carbon farms in Wisconsin, please let me know. We're working pretty strongly with Carbon Cycle Institute to see what we can do to bring a lot of these trainings here to Wisconsin and see what we can do for our farmers here. So thank you all for coming, and thank you guys for presenting.
If I could make a quick plug, just
Sure,
really quick.
please.
We are really excited about bringing carbon farm planning to the state of Wisconsin. Again, we have more than 350 farms. So if there is a district out there that's looking for farmer engagement, farmer participation, we can help connect the dots because we're talking to a lot of our farmers. So just as we partnered with William at Goldridge, we'd love to do the same with districts in Wisconsin.
That is great. Thank you so much. And I am so sorry. Thank you everybody for reminding me that this does have CEUs attached to it. So if you are a CCA and you have the app on your phone, scan this code to get your credit. Sorry, I almost forgot about that.